Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me okay? All right. So thank you guys for signing up to go through this. It was optional, but we hope that it's going to be helpful if you're not very comfortable with the work system, as well as giving you the opportunity to ask any questions that you might have. And what we'll do primarily today is just go through what it looks like to sign off on transactions in Works. And that is for approvers as well as for card holders, which is a bit different than how EDMS may have been set up before. So we do the card holders, they make their transactions, they upload their documentation, they put in a description of the purchase, and then after they sign off and it's allocated to budget and sub-account codes, then it goes to the approver, and the approvers will also sign off in the BOA Works system. Okay. So I'm going to get my screen share. Okay, can everyone see the Bank of America screen?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. Okay, so when you sign into Works, if you were a previous EDMS Bank of America Works user, you're going to use the same sign-in credentials. We are going to be updating your email addresses, so they will be the ODU email addresses, but your login credentials are going to remain the same. And if you are new to the Bank of America Works system, once we get the cardholders application and we're processing that, then you'll receive a welcome email from the Bank of America Works system with a link to establish your sign-in credentials. So this is the landing page after you sign in, and it's set up in 3 different sections primarily. Up here in the top right-hand side, we've got your user accounts, as well as if you want help and you're looking for the online guides that are put together by the Bank of America, they've got information there to help you. If you need to get in touch with Bank of America and you don't have your card handy, because their different phone numbers are on the back of the card, we've got the phone numbers show up here. And this is just the log out button. And the second main section is your action items. So if there's something waiting for you to do, it can be, if you're an approver, it'll be, for signing off on transactions. If you're a card holder, you'll have sign off for transactions. And where you see the action is download, that's meaning that there is a report that has run that is ready for you. And you can get to them by clicking on these blue underlined spots. So the third section is down here. It's the accounts dashboard. And this tells you at a glance, you'll see the last 4 digits of the card number. You'll see your monthly credit limit, the current balance, and that's the amount that's posted, kind of like personal bank accounts where there might be other transactions coming, but they haven't fully posted yet, so they're in that pending status. Current balance, and then available spend, that's how much you have left to spend on the card for the cycle, and available credit is 10,000. And see, the available credit here is going by the current balance. But you see, the available spend is a little bit less, and that has to do with the halfway discretionary limits. But if you want to know exactly how much you have available to spend, you're going to get that from looking at the authorization log. That's going to take into account anything that has gone through, gotten an authorization, but hasn't fully posted yet, and that halfway discretionary limit. And what that is, just to help clarify it a little bit, our Board of Visitors wanted to ensure that approvers were aware of and involved in the credit card activity and sign-offs. So they requested that we put something in place as a risk avoidance measure. So cardholders have up to half of their monthly cycle limit available to them, and then they're going to be blocked from spending anymore until they go in and sign off. Once they sign off, it'll roll to the approver. Approver signs off, and then remaining funds are freed up for them to use. Now, the Department of Accounts in Richmond does recommend signing off weekly, and that can also help you avoid having any issues with that halfway discretionary limit if you're signing off routinely. Okay, so there are typically a couple different ways to do most things in the Bank of America work system. So I will show you the different ways to do that. So to get to your report, as I mentioned earlier, you can go in and click on this ready spot, and it'll open up the document for you. You can also get to it by going into reports and completed. So I clicked on reports, and this takes me to the completed report section, which is exactly the same place that it would have taken me if I had clicked on reports completed up here. And then you'll click on the PDF to get it to open. Let's see. So this one didn't hold any transactions. Hold on. Anyway, it has the setup. You'll see the transactions, and you'll see the spots for authorizing and signing off, which you all won't have to worry about. We do have one department that still does the manual sign off. But this report is going to come to you 2 days after the billing cycle. And that's going to help you have a reference to make sure that you've signed off on all of the purchases for that cycle. And in this section too, you can also go in if a report comes to you and you want to maybe adjust it for some, budget tracking needs in your department. We can help you guys create reports for that. We also have reports found in our template library. And this is put into 2 sections. The personal templates are up at the top. And these are ones that the program administrators and the bank have put together. So if you wanted to run a reconciliation report and have it be for a different cycle because you wanted to look back at it, or maybe you wanted to look at, pull a report that had your whole fiscal year spend to date, or do it by quarter, you can either do it, you can do the, use the ODU reconciliation report and adjust it, or general purchase spend detail. Those are probably the best ones to pick. So you'll click on it and you get the drop down, and you can select modify run, and that opens up this screen that will let you, if you wanted to add any additional fields, if you wanted to add, if you wanted to add a field, then you just click on the thing and it'll move it over there. If you wanted to change it from being a PDF document to an Excel document so you can manipulate the data a bit, you can do that. And if you wanted to save it and have it show up in that top section, which is your personal template section, then you'll just select the option to save it. You can rename the template. You can put a description in there if you want to remind yourself, what information is in that report. And job name is going to be, that's what is going to show up after the report runs. So typically I name it the same thing as the template. And then you would click submit report. If you want to change the dates, we'll change it to, let's see, no. Okay, we can see the dates have updated. We'll submit that. And now we've got here, it's telling us it's the XLS. So we open that up. And we can see the details of the spending, the transaction, the post date, how much it was. And approvers can also run these reports, and when they run the reports, they will see the data for all of the cards that they approve.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that broke up just a little bit. Can you repeat it? Okay. So let's go in and take a look at your account information. So we click here and go into the view full details. Technology. But in the view full details, you'll be able to see the phone number that is associated with your account. You'll be able to see the mailing address. You'll be able to see a more detailed spend control profile, which is the spend control profile contains your monthly limit, your cycle limit, your monthly limit, which is the cycle limit, how much you can spend per transaction, which is the single transaction limit. And then you'll see no res at gas, which means no restaurant MCCs, no accommodations MCCs, and no gas-related MCCs. And MCC is short for merchant category code, so that means a larger category, such as it's a restaurant table, so it's going to have all of the merchant category codes that would be associated with restaurants and prepared food. And that would be bakeries, fast food places. I think there's a miscellaneous food MCC that is also included in that. So the only one that is restaurant related that is not blocked would be the one for Aramark. And we can talk about that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. So going into the expenses, this is where you would go to sign off on transactions. You can also get to them. And you see sign off, the type of sign off would be transaction. So you see that it defaults to the pending sign off page. These are things, that are still waiting to be signed off, obviously. But you can look at things that have been signed off or flagged if your approver sees that you have allocated to a budget code and maybe they intended to tell you that they wanted it charged to another budget code that you have on your card. They can flag the transaction and send it back to you to allow you to revise it. Or if you want to look at all maybe you wanted to go in and see what kind, you remember that you made a transaction a while ago, you know, the general time frame, but you can't remember which vendor it was, maybe. You can go in, you can adjust these date settings using the calendar function and look just within the date settings that where you know that transaction occurred. Or if you wanted to see if you know that you've signed off and maybe your PCard approver is really busy, sometimes they might be in a different area of campus, so it isn't it isn't as convenient to just pop in their office and ask them if they had a chance to sign off. You can look at this All tab and you can see where it says AH, that means account holder. So that's your sign off. And the APR stands for approver. So if we wanted to take a look at the account holder, it'll say when it was signed off and who signed off on it. And when we look at the approver, it'll tell you, okay, who signed off. It won't say manager at ODU. It'll have your approver's name in there. And the accountant, that's an automatic because it gets pulled by AP, and AP posts your transactions into Banner. But that's where that is. And you'll see if you vendor is here. An allocation, these are the ones that may have been allocated already. Maybe it's easier for you to go in and do the allocation and then go back and upload receipts later. Some folks do it that way. But you'll see that several of these have 3 green checks, which means the system will allow sign off because it has the information that it needs. And you'll see this top one has 2 red X's, and that means that it's missing information. So there are additional things that need to be added for the system to allow sign off. So let's go in. And look at our professional services. We'll look at this one. And there are a couple different ways that we can go in and get to the allocation. We can click on transaction and go to allocate edit. But you can also get to it by just clicking here. It'll open up the same exact screen. And the allocation is going to be up in the top, and it's going to tell you, the amount of the transaction. It'll have a description of the purchase, and that comes in from the vendor. And the GL01 field, GL being short for general ledger, is where you're going to put your budget code. Several folks don't know what their budget codes are yet. And we're actually, when we get the card applications, you can add the EVMS call centers, the 3-digit codes that you're used to using. But we also have a crosswalk that'll tell us for the department and for the approver who has authority to sign off on those. So we're doing it a bit than we typically do. And that we're looking to see who's got the authority and then adding them to the card rather than you all having to tell us. And this second, the GL02 is where you're going to put the sub-account. And those sub-accounts are the same 4-number sequences that are in Banner and that are in, when you get anything from the budget office, it'll say it's like the cars and Banner budgets. So what this information is telling the AP folks is where to put the transaction in Banner. So this department budget code really means, beginning with a 1, it means it's state funds. The BL is just a short indicator of which department it is. and it's biology, and 00 is just the sequence of that. So it's the first Ledger 1 account established for biology. And the GLO2, that's going to have a bit more description. And we have some short descriptions here to help you. So you can scroll through them, or you can free type and see, what kind it is if we wanted to look at okay, and Melody asked if there's a category column for verifying that your receipt was uploaded. Yeah, and I'll show you where that is. So the GLO2 account is going to be, you want to get something that's close to it, and I will be sending you a guide that has the more detailed descriptions. So we'll say this is printing services, and if there's a contract associated with it, you're going to need to put information in this field, the GLO3. And if you're not sure what the contract number is, don't worry about it. We've also got the vendor names in there. So I just started typing, and then it's going to filter out things that have those letters in it. And professional printing is one of our contracts, so we'll put that in. But say you didn't, it was a vendor and there was no contract, but it was a SWAM certified vendor. So we've got SWAM, so it would be SWAM, no contract available for the good or service. Vendor is SWAM certified. So you would pick that, and that would let us know, so we wouldn't have to ask additional questions. And if you did not use a vendor who had a contract or was SWAM certified, then you'll just need to add a justification letting us know why you did not use a contract and why you did not use a SWAM vendor. And those things are very important because we do reports. We have requirements from external public agencies on how much of our spending is against a contract, as well as how much of our spending is with SWAM vendors. There is legislation in place requiring the usage of SWAM businesses. There's also a governor's executive order. So it's a huge deal. And it's a huge deal because as a publicly assisted entity, we aren't just, a kind of business that's running, but it's taxpayer funded. And so we need to be making sure that we are being good stewards of our funds and helping our small businesses in the region. They've done case studies. A few years ago, the Department for Small Business and Supplier Diversity out of Richmond, did an economic study and found that when people spent money with the small businesses in their local area, the benefit to the Commonwealth was actually $1.46 per dollar, which sounds a little funny on the surface, but when you consider that when you're spending it within the community, that's also supporting jobs. So there are the business taxes that get paid to the Commonwealth. There are, the payroll payments that go to the employees. The employees are going to be spending, a great deal of their money within the community. So then there's that revenue that comes in that way and helps support the larger community. So. And then this is where we can add a description of our purchase. So if this were a printing purchase, we're not asking you to write a novel, but we do need enough information that is going to help us understand how it was used, like what it is and how it was used to benefit the university. Because we do a lot of reporting and a lot of slicing and dicing of your spending data, and we want to make sure that we are reporting it accurately We provide reports to the deans. We provide reports to the VPs. We provide reports to the president. We provide reports to the Department of Small Business and Supplier Diversity. We also do reports that go up to the president's office and the Board of Visitors. So we definitely want to characterize your spending accurately. So in this comment field, if it was a print job, say we had literary festival booklets. So literary festival booklets for Lit Fest Fall program would give us the information that we needed. But if it were a different kind of report, say it was so it could be promotional flyers to attract prospective students, or maybe it's prospective donors, or maybe it's prospective employees. Had this been a travel transaction, we would want to know, say somebody went to a conference, so we would put the name of the conference. So this would tell us that it's a conference registration for Dr. X to attend Freakonomics in Chicago. So that's telling us where the event is taking place, what it is, and then the specific details of what it is. So, and that would be enough. So you just want to avoid putting things like lab supplies, because supplies, lab supplies, office supplies, those are so general that they don't really give us a lot of information to figure out what the transaction is. Then we'll save it, we'll close it. And we can see here, and because I didn't keep the comment in there, it took it away. So, So now we see that it's in there. And Melody, your question about the uploaded receipts, this is over here in the yes, no column. So you can get to it by going into manage receipts, or you can get into it by just clicking on the yes or no button. And it's a lot like adding a receipt to or adding a document to an email. And new receipt will let you browse your computer to find the file. We'll see what we got. And you'll see the name of the file. The name of the file shows up there. the receipt date, it's fine to just use the date that you're doing, that you're signing it up. And the description is just going to be something that might help you internally. Like if you're uploading an invoice as well as a receipt, then it might help you just to say that it's the invoice. So it's uploaded. See the date. See, this is the file name and this is the description. We can see this is changed to yes right here. And we can see that we have assigned a budget code, a sub-account code, and the contract SWAM information here. So that one is going to be ready for sign off. Sign off you can do by using the drop down, or you can do it by sign off. I noticed this comment box popped up. If you've already put a comment in there, then you don't need to put it again, because that'll just make it show up twice in the system. If you know that you've already put the comment in there for the transaction, just click OK. And see that the transaction is no longer showing. If the transaction is still showing in your pending sign-off area, then it wasn't signed off for some reason. And sometimes the reason might be if you didn't include all of the information and you end up having one of these red X's, or if you were, somehow in the dollars, if the amount that you've allocated doesn't match the amount of the transaction, it's going to prevent sign off that way too. And so we did the sign off as a card holder, and it's going to roll to the approver. So the approver will now see it in their pending sign off area, which is going to look very much the same.
Just out of curiosity, how long does the approver have to sign off? And if there is a delay in them signing off, does it affect the available credit similarly to if you don't sign off, it will affect your available credit?
Yes, it will affect the available credit. The funds are not restored to the card until the approver signs off. And so the billing cycles run from mid-month to mid-month. So we'll say April 16th to May 15th. And after the 15th, then the statements are going to be electronic, and they will come to you, within 2 days or so after the close of the billing cycle. But you don't need to wait for those to come in to sign off on your transactions. As soon as your transaction posts, cardholders can go in and do their sign off, and it'll roll to the approver. So all of the transactions for that cycle, April 16 through May 15, would need to be signed off by May 30th. And because we are audited, we have 2 sets of internal auditors, and we have 2 sets of state level auditors who are looking at the books. And since we want to make sure that we have the transactions allocated correctly, it really needs to be done. And it is probably the most cut and dry violation that we have to send out. And 2 weeks after the end of the cycle is ample time. Some universities only allow 3 days after the end of the cycle. EDSL does send out reminders to folks to do the sign off. But when we say complete sign off, we mean the cardholder attaching all of the documentation, providing the justifications and the description of the purchase, as well as the approver sign off. A transaction is not completely signed off until the approver has signed off. And yes, those transactions not being signed off are going to affect your credit limit. And it can also, the first time somebody gets a violation for that, you know, it's just a warning, you know, like a violation letter that's going to go out. And that is issued against the card. And that card we see as the responsibility equally of the cardholder and the approver. So that's going to need, that's first time is just the violation letter. The second time, you know, the cardholder and the approver are going to need to go through the training again. And the third time that the transactions are not signed off in a timely manner, then we suspend the card for 30 days. If it happens again, then we suspend the card for 60 days. And if it happens a fifth time, then we revoke the card. So, so you'll want to make sure, because it's one of the easier things to handle, and we don't like to send out violations. But we are audited on whether we follow our policies. So if we need to send them out, then we will. There's also a report that is available that you can run that'll show the incomplete sign-offs if you want to, you know, if it's helpful to take a look at those. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
Under EVMS, we had to have in our records a expense documentation form. Is that required at ODU?
You'll need to you'll need to have either the BOA statement or the ODU reconciliation report, which pulls the same fields from BOA Works that are in the bank statement. The BOA statement is going to look, it's going to be a PDF of what used to come in the mail to you.
But in addition, we had to have an expense documentation, which you had to list out what it was and why it was used, the date, the approver. It was more an internal form we used.
The majority of that information, you're going to be putting into your works comment.
We do. It was just an extra form we had to have, much the same information.
Yeah, and I think that was likely because you had approvals on the back end, as opposed to you know, having the approvers do the sign off in works.
Okay.
But since the approvers are signing off electronically, we were able to get an exception from the Department of Accounts in Richmond that allows the electronic sign off and receipt upload and the descriptions of the purchases to be enough. So we don't have folks duplicating effort in both the electronic area as well as the paper area.
I have another question.
Okay.
Under EVMS, we had many PCards out there. For example, my boss had one, I had one. Now that she doesn't have one, am I allowed to give her my card, like for her, if she's doing her CPA prep course or her license? No.
That if that happens and we find out about it, we are required by DOA to suspend that card for 90 days.
Okay, so if she gives me the information, then I can put it in to the company on her behalf.
Yes.
Okay.
So what folks typically do around here is if I need our office manager Barbie to pay, you know, to pay for something, she's a card holder for our department. You know, I'll go in, I'll sign into my account and, you know, put in the information that I need in there, and then you know, I'll ask her, she'll come into my office and she'll sit at my desk, and I'm not looking because I don't want to see her card number. And then she'll put in the payment information and submit it. And then when I get the receipt, I forward it to her to make sure that she's
okay. That's what I was hoping, that I could go in there while she's doing it on her behalf. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll tell you the reason for the very strict take on the card sharing is because if only the person who's named on the face of the card is making transactions, if something comes in that is not a purchase that you made. It's fraudulent. You can say with 100% certainty that you know that you did not make you did not make that charge. If multiple people have access to that card number and can use it, it's more difficult and the waters get muddied, which means there's more of a risk for the university for fraud.
That makes sense. But when they were calling it a department P card, that's the one that kind of threw me. Because they said at least one person in the department have it. So I just didn't know whether there was different.
No, it's because folks who do business stuff, you know, and are more comfortable working, you know, within the systems are the ones that really should be using the cards because it's going to be easier for them to manage. They're going to be more comfortable with it, you know, with the different requirements, especially at the state level, you know, as opposed to EVMS's program, which was a bit different because you all also use them as travel cards. So it made sense for, you know, more of the upper level management folks to have those cards. So, you know, we went through and did the analysis of, you know, what kind of spending was going on with those cards. And, you know, it's going to be a work in progress because, you know, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like with the regular spending, you know, being more concentrated. So if there needs to be adjustments, but we say, you know, that the department should definitely have one, and if it's, you know, a little bit larger department, then, you know, it's good to have a backup. The recommendations that we sent in, you know, were based on primarily having 2 cards per department, and for some of the very large areas like pediatrics, we'd recommended having additional cards beyond that. Okay. Any additional questions? I know there have been some questions about Aramark and the catering process. So if you are ordering from Aramark, they have a CaterTrack's ordering system, which is online, and they have a couple of different menus. They've got their everyday catering menu. They also have some branded concepts. So you can order Panera and you can order Chick-fil-A through CaterTrack's. And then if you're doing the order through Aramark, they're going to send you a form that you're going to need to sign off on, or someone's signature authority is going to need to sign and send back to them for their records. But you will not have to reach out to Kelly or Edsel or me to request a restaurant exception. You know, if you are not using Aramark, it's a little bit of additional work because it is a state level MCC restriction. So we've got the form, the restaurant exception request, that is for larger events. So we're not talking about, you know, 2 and 3 person business meals. Those go through the Chrome River reimbursement process. But the, you know, for the larger things, you can send us an exception request for a restaurant exception request. You know, if you're using Gourmet Gang or Orapax, or Taste. I forget, there were, I think, maybe 2 more. And you'll need to send us that ahead of time because we are only authorized by DOA to approve restaurant exceptions prior to the event happening. And that's because once the event has happened, we owe the vendor that money. So if it's a vendor, you know, that for some reason isn't allowable, then you know, we need to be able to let the departments know before that event happens. But you know, we'll approve that, and then once you get the email with the approved restaurant exception, you'll just need to hang on to that and upload it with your documents and receipt transactions in Works. And if you don't get the restaurant exception done, then when you try to run that card with a vendor, it's going to decline because it's a blocked merchant category code.
Heather, can I ask a question about the restaurant exceptions?
Sure.
So on our internal portal, I know that it was indicated that some vendors have been identified as approved, many of which you mentioned. I think in addition, there's Granby Street Pizza and Moe's. So are we limited to those that have been identified? Those are the only ones that we would be able to fill out a restaurant exception form for? Or if we work with a larger caterer, for instance, which I know sometimes I'm in the special events department, and I am getting a lot of questions from folks on campus who host events, and at times we do use different caterers. Is that allowed?
If there's a need for that, then there would need to be additional steps that would need to be taken to get them added to the approved vendor list. Because when we are, and I'll tell you, we didn't have any input before that information went out, or we would have provided some additional context.
Okay.
Before, for those vendors who are approved, we're reaching out to them and getting their business license and getting their, their certificate of health insurance. So there's some additional things that we're getting on the back end, so folks in departments don't have to worry about it. So I won't say that you can't do it. It's going to be best to work with Aramark first. But if you're running into situations where you have larger events, and if Gourmet Gang can't do it, because they should be on that approved list.
They are. And we have met with Aramark in an attempt to learn as much as we can about how they're able to service our side, since we don't have a kitchen and all of those things that you guys have over on your side. So we're hoping to be able to share that with the campus, and this may need to be like an offline conversation. I just want to be sure I understand from a PCard perspective.
No, it's a great
what that means.
We're getting a lot of questions. So
okay.
Aramark conversation, caterer conversation, totally fine. But if you're in the special events area, then I think that's going to affect that may affect several other departments as well.
Yes.
But if there's a need for us to add another catering vendor,
okay,
shoot me an email. We did do. Kelly pulled a report that had 3 years worth of EBMS PCard spending. And I pulled that and looked at it a bunch of different ways, but one of the things that we extracted from that was all of the restaurant purchases, and then the ones that were obviously out of town, pulled those out, and then looked at how much happened, broken down by month, broken out by day of the week, and shared that with Aramark to help them figure out staffing levels. But in this first year, we're still figuring out, what the need is and how it's going to work. So we're trying to, that's one of the reasons for the approved caterers, is making sure that folks on the EBMS side are covered.
Thank you.
Options. Yeah. But if there's a vendor that you want us to consider, if you, could send us the information, then
okay,
reach out to them.
Thank you very much.
All right. Does anybody else have questions?
People are putting questions in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, can we go over reconciliation? Okay, so reconciliation is going in, signing off on the transaction, allocating your budget code, your sub-account code, the contract or SWAM number, and adding that comment, and then uploading your receipt documentation. And then, you're gonna wanna maintain files, internally within the department. You're gonna wanna maintain a copy of the PCard statement or the reconciliation report that you can pull from Works. And those are administrative files. So the state of Virginia record retention guidelines say that those need to be kept in a department central file where somebody else would have access to it if you were on medical leave or if you left that position for 3 years. If you had an additional question, feel free to pop that in there too. Let's see, and Emily, how do we know who was recommended to get a PCard in our department? That was handled on the EVMS side. And I believe Tammy Chrisman sent those recommendations to department heads. I don't want to say that with 100% certainty.
No, that's accurate. No,
Okay.
she did. Yeah, I was one of them. Yeah, she did.
Okay. Let's see, and Stephanie asks, okay, with the requirement to use SWAM businesses being such a priority, why is there such a push to use Airmark? Shouldn't there be more local SWAM options? Well, Airmark is our campus caterer, and there was a competitive bid that went out, and they won that. I will tell you, they work very closely with SWAM vendors. A lot of the farmers that they use, a lot of the companies that provide them with their, their paper goods, their trash cans, their, their meats and all of that sort of thing are SWAM vendors, because they send us those reports on a quarterly basis. Is there a specific email we should send in a small business for the approved vendors list?
Sorry, I meant to say, is there an email we should send our suggested small businesses for the approved vendors list? When you had said more information about other restaurants.
Oh, yeah, and that's not, because we're trying to keep it down, to a minimum number that is going to be manageable. But if it's for, like, if we need to add another larger caterer, but you can send those to pcardadmin@odu.edu, because Edsel, Kelly, and I all have access to that email address. So, if we also do a lot of outreach with the SWAM community, so we're out at events and, doing training sessions and things with those folks. So we have some guides that we've put together to help you find SWAM businesses and to find contracts. And I'll send you links to those afterward. I've got an email that has the links. We've put together a resource page, and I'll send you some links with the some travel guides as well. And there was one more thing. Oh, just finding the contracts, and then there's a PCard section that's got additional PCard guidance and some guides. One of the guides is the Getting Started guide. It's an Excel sheet and it's got multiple tabs. The first one is just a small purchase process overview, and it just gives some guidance to help folks stay, not inadvertently get into trouble. And then the second tab will help with the sub-account codes, because you'll be able to see what the sub-account codes are, and it'll have the longer descriptions. And in the very first column on that page, it has the larger expense categories that they roll up into. Because sometimes you might not know the words that you're looking for, and rather than go through a whole, list, that's kind of lengthy, if you know that it fits into one of these, 20 general categories, then you can filter it out and only look through the ones that might apply to you. Let's see. Does ODU allow for department year-end staff lunches? That's, yes, and that is going to really fall under the University Policy 3001, places a lot of responsibility back on the budget unit directors, and it also lays out, what is allowable for the different ledgers. Like the ledger ones being the E&G funds from the state. Ledger 6, those are local funds that we refer to as discretionary. So there are more kinds of purchases that are allowable with those Ledger 6 funds than with the Ledger 1s. And that University Policy 3001 does spell those out. And if you got the emails where we had the policy links, and last week IT made some adjustments with rolling out the new website that made those links not work. So we will be updating the links, in our documents and have those available for folks. But Policy 3001 is very helpful to have on hand. We refer folks to it all the time. Some things that are, kind of that are a little bit different, like flowers. There are specific occasions where flowers are allowed, and other than that, like they're allowed for if somebody's in the hospital, or there's a medical situation, or if somebody has passed away. But other than that, flowers are not allowed to go out. And the memorials and hospitalization flowers have to come from a Ledger 6. But if it's just, a thank you for an employee, that's not something that should come out of the university funds according to that policy. Any other questions I can answer for you? It doesn't have to be PCard related. If it's just procurement related in general, I'm happy to help, or if I don't know the answer, to pass it along. Okay, well, I thank you all for your time today, and I will be sending that follow-up email with the training information and guides. And if you come up with any questions later, feel free to send those in to pcardadmin at odu.edu, because it's helpful for all three of us to see those. All right, thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.